In the 1920s and 30s, Paris was the art capital of the world. Brancusi, Picasso, Matisse, the greatest were here. Young painters and sculptors from all over the globe flocked to the City of Light. And for the first time, a number of African Americans were able to come.
It was a time when the economy was booming after World War I, when transatlantic travel became cheaper, and there was still this lingering perception from the 19th century that it was a basic part of a learned person's education to have completed the grand tour of Europe, and Paris was at the heart of it. And you had all the grand museums, the Louvre, the Musée de l'Homme, all the historic monuments, the cathedrals. There were fantastic academies like the École des Beaux-Arts, Julian, the Académie de la Chaumière, and there these students could study alongside people from many different nationalities and be treated as equal.
But behind the glamour of Paris life was a darker side few Americans knew. For those without family or resources, this was a hard place to live. And of all of our African American artists in Paris, Nancy Elizabeth Prophet struggled the most. She lived hand to mouth for practically all her 12 years here. Her first images of Paris seemed to express the emotional and spiritual discomfort she had. Pieces like Silence, she said she lived alone for months without speaking to anyone. Another piece she called Poverty showed a standing nude woman with a serpent wrapped around its legs and reaching up to her.
Prophet was so desperate at times that the only sustenance she had was afternoon tea and cakes at the atelier of a French acquaintance, and she said one day her friend offered her no refreshments, and she was so hungry that she stole a piece of meat and a potato out of the dog food bowl. And she said, for the first time in my life I was hungry, but this seemed of little importance in comparison to finishing the bust.
Despite her unstable life, Prophet was able to create many remarkable pieces. And crucially for her, as for all of these artists, she was able to show works in Paris when almost no galleries or museums in the U.S. would accept works by black artists, no matter how talented they were. In 1931, Prophet had the chance to feast her eyes on the spectacular colonial exposition in Paris's Bois de Vincennes. She saw amazing replicas of Angkor Wat and other monuments from France's vast empire. But what excited her most were the African artworks on display. She said, "People are seeing heads of thought and reflection. People are seeing the aristocracy of Africa for the first time." And it moved her so much that she created her own work of art, based on the head of a Maasai warrior called Congolais. It became Prophet's greatest success. Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney bought it for the Whitney Museum of American Art. Another sculptor made headlines before she even set foot in France, when the admissions committee of the American Art Program of the École des Beaux-Arts in Fontainebleau, all white American men, reneged on its promise to accept her. The reason? They found out that Augusta Savage was black. As the head of the committee admitted, they didn't want to upset the Southern white girls in the group. Savage's reply, "Instead of desiring to force my society on 99 white girls, I should be pleased to go to France on a ship with a black captain, a black crew, and myself as sole passenger." But Augusta Savage kept trying, and thanks to a grant from the Rosenwald Foundation, finally made it to Paris at the end of the 1920s, for 2 very industrious years. In 1937, thanks to a sabbatical from Howard University, one last African American artist was able to come in these years. She was Lois Mailou Jones. Away from segregated Washington, D.C., she would later recall, "France gave me my first feeling of absolute freedom."
I guess of all the African American artists of the 20s and 30s, the one artist who is most identified in my mind with Paris is Lois Mailou Jones. One of my all-time favorite paintings by her is Les Fétiches, a painting that was done in the end of the 1930s. And it's a work that incorporates ideas of primitivism, ideas of cubism, theories of self-identity as an African American in France. And to me, it's one of the most important works of that era. France, and Paris in particular, gave many African American artists the credentials that said, if I have operated in this world of art, which is Paris, surely I can continue those endeavors and those activities once I get back to the United States. The fact of the matter is once they got back to the United States, it was very difficult to maintain the kind of joie de vivre and commitment to art that they had in Europe. But I believe that experience steeled them and girded them and allowed them to have the confidence to pursue the careers that they pursued in the United States, despite the fact that the opportunities might not have been there.
A case in point. In 1941, Lois Mailou Jones wanted to enter this landscape into an exhibit at a top gallery in Washington, D.C., but the museum did not accept works by African Americans. So she asked a French friend to enter it for her, using the friend's name. It won the prestigious Robert Woods Bliss Award. 2 years later, Lois Mailou Jones revealed who'd really painted it.